Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Pho3nix, and I'm joined by my good friend, the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, the sexiest voice in triathlon, James Bale. Welcome to the podcast, mate. It's a shambles already. How you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. It's the I actually had an Instagram message from somebody in the week asking if I fancied doing some audiobook recording.
Mate,
Um,
I
so
understand why.
off the back of listening to the podcast, so that's my new profession now. I'm going to be in the ears of every runner and commuter from here to Scotland. How are
What
you,
I think
mate?
what we should do is I'm going to expand the MX Endurance offering to be like guided sleep meditations, and you can be the person who narrates them.
Yeah, I'm up for that. I'm up for that. Do I do it in person or is this?
That's the bonus. That's the premium.
Yeah, that's the premium.
That's the benefit for people who come to our St. George camp is that you'll sit next to the bed and whisper in their ear as they're falling asleep. Oh, we've managed to derail this meeting. Literally, guys, I'm sure this has been edited out of the podcast, but as soon as we hit record, somebody in my building started like using a drill or something. I was like, what's going on? So it threw us a little bit. So welcome to the podcast, guys. This podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, the world's premier endurance sports community, created by four-time world champion Chris McCormack. James, what's something you like about MX Endurance? I know what the answer is, but tell me anyway.
It's the building momentum towards our St George camp in May around the slightly unique and interesting Ironman World Championships that's happening, which is actually the 2021 World Championships happening in May 2022 in St George, Utah. And as we've announced a while ago, we are doing a camp around that, and the momentum is building on a level like I've never seen. We've got people signing up, we've got plans, we've got it's going to be an adventure, isn't it, mate?
Mate, it honestly like that because we've basically made it available for MX people so far, but it's not just for MX people. So we're getting all these inquiries. Like I've genuinely been that podcast and MX Endurance email has been popping off this week. People like wanting more information and stuff. So yeah, if you're keen, like you don't need to be an MX member to come. We're opening it up to anybody. If you want to come and like play Spot the Pro with us in St George, do some training and so it's gonna be awesome. I'm so excited about it. And yeah, mate, I'm the page should be ready like any day. I've written the copy. We're just getting a video edited together by our content team. But it's gonna be pretty good, mate. I'm so excited to get back training with a group of people. Like I always think MX Endurance shines when we're able to get together at events.
Yeah.
And that being the first one they're really going to get to this year. It's been too long, mate. The last one was 2020 March. We did the Phuket camp literally as the world shut down. And yeah, it's been a long 2 years since then, mate. So it'll be good to get back to events.
And it's not just the training, is it? Because there's going to be inclusive trainings in the mornings, and then we're going to be doing podcast interviews and live dinners and stuff. So there's going to be an opportunity to meet
live dinners. What are the what's
live
the,
dinners as opposed to pre-recorded dinners, which I often do for people. This is the budget membership option.
We're so used to like Zoom meetings that we all just sit in our room on a Zoom screen eating a meal. This is normal, isn't it? Mate, I don't know if you saw, I got a Whoop band this week too.
And how's that going for you?
It's really good, actually. I find it very fascinating, although I still don't necessarily understand the lingo. I've got to do 4 days before it gives me like my official data. Oh, here we go. The drill's back. So if you guys can hear it, I don't know what the hell is going on. Again, it's 8 o'clock at night. Who uses a drill this time?
You're going to see one of those little cameras come through your wall at some point on the wire.
It's actually the Triathlon Taran podcast heading up a spy thing. They want to see what we're doing. Or Joe Skipper's Triathlon Mockery podcast.
So this Whoop band, is that part of your ongoing desire to become as much as like Lionel Sanders as you possibly can?
Basically, I know people normally traditionally expect me to wear in blue. I'm going to go green this year. I'm thinking about switching to Canyon. Yeah, mate. No, it's good. Anyway, I don't know why I wanted to talk about that, but I just saw it on my wrist and it's like, I'm proud of it. I'm enjoying it. It's giving me a lot of interest in new data, whatever the difference is. But mate, how about you? What's been happening? I jumped straight into the little preamble, but I haven't actually asked you, how are you going, apart from doing audiobook recordings, mate? What's news with James Bale?
Yeah. My ankle is recovering. I still can't run yet, but I'm just basically swimming the house down. I'm doing sort of 12 Ks a week in the pool. I've got a slight wrist issue, but that's apparently just tendonitis. Apparently I knocked that when I fell in the pothole as well.
Sure, mate. Sure.
But yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well, this is my right hand. I am actually left-handed. So, I've had a few of those conversations this week and I can disprove that theory quite readily. Other than that, mate, yeah, I'm not too bad. Heading over to Girona in a week and a half to do a photo shoot with Joe Skipper. So, actually being able to move around the world a little bit is bringing some light into my life. When are you
Yeah, I'm getting
first
close.
leaving Australia, Mr. Ford? When's that happening?
Uh,
It's coming up quick now, isn't it?
yeah, mate, it's only like 4 weeks away or something. I think actually this time in 4 weeks I'm on a plane. I think I haven't booked. I've got to book my flights this week. Be off to Dubai for the 70.3. Can't wait, man. It's gonna be something. And then the world the travel starts because then it's basically a trip a month
Yeah.
for the rest of the year. So we've got sub
Someone,
7, sub 8 coming up,
someone at the
and
swimming pool last night told me that you were doing Ironman Barcelona, and I was like,
really,
no, no, he's not. Is he?
no,
And are
I'm
you?
not.
Put that
No,
to rest
absolutely
now.
not.
No,
No,
absolutely.
Barcelona 70.3, I think, is what I said I was maybe going to do
Oh, okay.
because we're doing the Pho3nix Foundation is doing the event there. That we this is a internal MX conversation, but we're hoping to do an event at Barcelona. I think Chris is doing the 70.3, and I was like, yeah, mate, I want to race you and beat you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I might come and do
yeah,
that as well.
I think we've already had this discussion.
Yeah,
Is your
probably.
is your ankle injury impacting your brain or?
Oh, mate, you should see me. I'm covered in. I'm still at 2.5 weeks now, and I'm still covered in bruises and cuts and hematoma on my. It's like I've been in a fight.
I'm sorry if people can hear that because I do not know what the hell is going on. There's literally like yeah. Anyway, we'll press on. I'll remove it in post or something. I don't know. But look, let's get into the news, James Jimbo Bale. I've realized in listening, I keep saying your full name a lot. Like I need to just start calling you James rather than James Bale because it's weird. So catch me up if I do that. Tell me.
It's a
The
strange
first
thing that
thing
a lot of people do to me, mate. For some reason, a lot of people use my full name all the time. I don't know why. They just do.
I think I know you don't like Jimbo, so I try to avoid using it as much
Yeah,
as
Jimbo.
possible.
Yeah, it's not for me.
Now, this first thing, I know a lot of people discuss it, but this came up in the MX Endurance group. One of our members shared it, and I wanted to discuss it. It was a letter that came in. Is the fact that Ironman are now offering World Championship slots to AWA Gold members. The letter says, we hope this message finds you well and greet in 2022 with vitality and optimism. As an athlete that held All World Athlete Gold status last year in 2021, you likely welcomed a return to racing just as much as we did, albeit the season was not without its pandemic-related setbacks and challenges. We know this comeback has been phased and that many of you are still looking forward to your first race back in the saddle. Nonetheless, we hope you will join us to write the next chapter as we look ahead in 2022. This year, Ironman will host an unprecedented 3 World Championship events after the postponement and relocation of the 2021 World Championship to St. George. It's going to be a big year with many firsts and big opportunities. One such opportunity we'd like to extend to you, as you were a gold all-world athlete in 2021, we invite you to accept a slot and join us at the 2021 Ironman World Championships on May 7, 2022. This event will be the first time the Ironman World Championship has taken place outside of Hawaii, and as we celebrate Kumakahi, a new beginning, we all welcome athletes from all walks of life, culminating in the largest field of a World Championship competition yet. Now, there's more to it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this, James Bale. I did it right away. God damn it. James, what are your thoughts about them offering World Championship slots to all world athletes?
In normal circumstances, yeah, it would be very tempting for people like us, commentators on the sport, to pile in and be like, "Oh, it undervalues the prestige of doing a world championship because they're just floating it down the river to whoever will take it." I mean, I know somebody in my local town who was 45th in his Ironman and he got a slot for Utah, and now they're rolling it out to the AWA Gold athletes because they want to fill up the race because But I think in reality, my brain goes to a place where it's been a shockingly strange few years. You haven't got the ease of travel that you'd normally get across the globe, where you've got people who, and you also haven't had the qualification races, so you haven't been able to fill it up from two perspectives. Really, you've got people haven't been able to qualify because they haven't been in the races, and people aren't able to travel as easily as they should be at the moment. So you're going to have trouble filling up a world championship race. So I think, in reality, if you get offered a spot and you want to go and do it, and you can go and do it, go and enjoy it. Don't listen to any naysayers who say, "Oh, you didn't qualify properly because you didn't get in your certain percentage in your age group." Nah, stuff that, man. Get out there and enjoy a world championship in a beautiful part of the world with red cliffs and massive, big red boulder things, and enjoy the bike ride and have at it. I say.
You know, I I saw some comments today, and one of the things that like you want to talk about what grinds my gears the most is that whole like, if you've been part of this sport for a long time, I hate that sort of elitism thing that
Yeah, yeah,
happens.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like honestly, as soon as I read that, it just straight away makes me go, I don't value your opinion very much. Like I struggle to. It like puts up a set of like I don't know red mist up my eyes or something. I'll be honest. People may know this. I've never done an Ironman before in my entire life. I have no plans on doing an Ironman anytime soon. If I got this letter offering me a slot, I'd take it, mate. You want to talk about me I would love to, like, again, just go and do it. Like, if I was ever going to just do an Ironman, I've always said
Yeah,
if they just offer me a slot, like, I thought I'd 100% take it. I think you are actually exactly right. We know for a fact that the reason that Ironman puts on World Championship events is for the age group signups. If there aren't enough age groups, there's not going to be a pro race. So if they need to do whatever they need to do to fill this field to make sure that we have a pro race, do it. Because I do not want to see the pro race not happen in St. George. I want it to be packed. I want to see some incredible racing on a different course that we've not seen before. So, yeah, I'm all for it, mate.
exactly. And the negative comments online from people who say, "Well, if you've been part of this sport for a long time, you know what it means." And just do one. Do one.
Yeah,
Don't
and
do it
the
then,
other,
mate. Turn
yeah,
turn your social media off and just don't worry about it. But don't
that,
criticize those
yeah,
people that are going and having fun and enjoying the race, because ultimately we do this for fun. The age group field is not a selection of almost pros. It's a selection of age groupers having fun. Get out
yeah,
and have some
exactly.
fun.
And I respect the people that have, like, a friend of the show, Hal the Colonel Cross, said, like, I wouldn't take this slot because I want to qualify. And I'm like, mate,
Yeah,
I
that's
get that.
cool.
Like,
Yeah,
if
totally.
you exactly, but
That's his bag.
I also know Hal's not the sort of guy who would then belittle people for wanting to. Like,
No.
I think it's, like I said, I'm a realist. In my heart of hearts, does it devalue? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Those people that have, done, they've gone through, like, for me, if I was to rock up having never done an Ironman and raced the World Championships, I could understand why a person who had been through the ringer and trained for an Ironman and suffered to get a sub 9 hour result to get the top of the age group to earn the slot. If they look at me and they were like, "What the hell are you doing here?" I would get it. But at the same time, I don't care because I wouldn't be going there. I would just be going there for like I done a race. Oh, I did the World Championships, my first Ironman. Like, I think that'd be cool.
But it's not new
But
either. This kind of offering is not new.
exactly,
Way before COVID came along in 2018, I think I was sitting in the roll down in 70.3 Edinburgh, and they were just giving away slots to the 70.3 World Championships of South Africa. Anybody that wanted it, because they were
yeah,
just like, we got so many.
we've all
So
seen it.
this
We've
isn't
all seen it.
exactly. It's not. I mean, we know, having, if you've been part of the sport for a long time, you know that this shit happens. You can just get a slot somehow,
But
sometimes
Kona,
randomly.
mate, Kona. Don't forget because it's all about the history of the race.
Yeah, yeah.
Bloody hell. Don't tweet it. Don't at me. I already know your opinions, people. Now, this next thing, James, I put it in. I did James that time. I put it in, and I felt a little bit like I don't know if we're allowed to refer to an article that refers to our own podcast as news, but it's something that came up in the interview I did with Lucy and Reese last week that I didn't really get to discuss with you, and I thought actually warrants discussion. So this article comes from our own website, mxendurance.com. It was written by Noel de Guzman, one of our incredible writers.
Yeah.
And that's the fact that Lucy Charles-Barclay wants an all-British pacer team for her sub-8 effort. It says Lucy and Reese guested on the MX podcast to talk about their plans for 2022 with the Ironman 70.3 World Championships, then sub-7 or sub-8. Team Charles-Barclay is looking for every bit of advantage they can muster to deliver the margin they need for Lucy to go under 8 hours for the full distance of triathlon. Now, each athlete is allowed to select 10 pacemakers to help them over the 3.8 kilometer swim, 180 kilometer bike, and 42.2 kilometer run. Lucy wants an all British team, saying the fastest time ever over the distance is by Chrissy Wellington, who's a British athlete. So I really wanted to try and have an all British team of women so that we keep that time within Great Britain. So most of my team are Brits at the moment. It's not fully confirmed yet. Now, I thought this was an interesting thing to discuss, James, because there is a lot of talent in British triathlon at the great British triathlon at the moment. And in the article, Noel's put together the top 10 ranked British athletes by the PTO. Number one is Emma Pallant-Brown, is number 6. Second is Kat Matthews, who's ranked number 9. Then Holly Lawrence, who's ranked 12th. Jodie Stimpson ranked 19th. Fenella Langridge ranked 21st. Lucy Buckingham in 23rd. Nikki Bartlett 28th. Ruth Astle in 30th. Laura Siddle 37th. And Kimberly Morrison 44th. Then you also have to consider some of the short course athletes. So we've got people like Jess Limont, Georgia Taylor Brown, Sophie Caldwell, Beth Potter. Just to name, Beth Potter's, she's Scottish, but I don't know how you guys are a bit weird
Yeah,
about
yeah.
what's what
Well,
and what's not in certain things.
that would count,
But
I
I
think.
thought this was an interesting thing, mate, to discuss is who do you think are the athletes that you would like to see Lucy Charles pick as her pacers and maybe why?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, without question, I think Kat Matthews would bring value on the run, as would Beth
Yep.
Potter. I think those two athletes as runners. I mean, the rules are they've got 10 they basically got a pool of 10 athletes, and they can
Yep.
swap them in as they want, or is there a
Yep.
limit on how many swaps they can do?
I think it's as they want. I don't know.
Okay.
Again, I should know, but I don't. I think they can swap them as much as. I don't think you'll probably see swaps in the swim. I think because it's a
No.
point-to-point swim, it might be logistically too difficult. But the rest of it is they can come in and out as much as they want.
Yeah. Then I would have a selection of I'd have a couple of short course athletes on the swim just to
Hmm.
get me up to pace and get me going. I don't think Lucy Charles-Barclay is going to struggle that much on the swim. And looking at that list of athletes that are in the top 10 on the PTO rankings, I don't think many of them would be able to hold her on the swim. So I don't think any of them would be much value on the swim. So I think
We see,
you'd have to look
yeah,
at Jess Learmonth or someone like that,
and Sophie Caldwell,
and Sophie Coldwell, to be able to pull her along on the swim. So I'd be looking down that direction, probably Lucy and Sophie in the swim, and then
Jess and
ah
Sophie, Jess and Sophie in the swim.
yeah, sorry, yeah, Lucy, Jess, and Sophie in the swim, and then on the bike you'd probably be talking
Jess,
to
Kat,
Jess, Kat, Holly, Emma Pallant possibly, and then I'd be leaning
Ruth
on
Astle, maybe. Ruth has
Ruth
got a
Astle,
killer
yeah.
bike.
I'd be leaning on Kat Matthews and Beth Potter for the run, but you've got a pool of 10, so anybody that's feeling fresh at that point can come in.
Georgia
And
Taylor Brown, Jodie
Georgia Taylor Brown,
Stimson.
yeah, indeed. I suppose these athletes don't need to be able to run the marathon distance at a certain pace, do they? They can just come in and do bits and pace them up to, and then dip out again. So it's a nice pool, mate. It's nice having such strength and depth on the British triathlon scene, I must say.
Do you like the fact that she's trying to keep it all British? Does that as a proud Brit? Is that something you like to read? Like, do you go, yeah, I like this, or do you not really care?
I mean, as I've probably said before on the podcast, I'm not particularly nation based when it comes to my supporting of sport, because
It's
I'm
funny
not.
because every time we talk about the Collins Cup, you're very happy to become all European on me.
Yeah, well, that's just getting into character, isn't it? But I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not a flag waving sort of.
is that just because you lost the Ashes so badly, or
No, I think it's more because it's more because my background in sport watching, it comes from pro cycling, which is slim pickings to in the late 90s to early noughties, and then ultimately it's done based on teams rather than nationalities. So you're not really supporting a nationality.
plus Bradley Wiggins is Australian, so you those didn't even get to claim that
Belgian.
victory. So
Um, so yeah, but I appreciate the decision she's made, and I think that it adds an extra element to it, and I like that. I'm just not like rah rah Britain, Britain, Britain. What do
yeah,
you
that's
think
fair.
of it?
I like it. I like that she's added like and again. I always one of the things people probably sick of me talking about is I love the stories around it, and I love that this is just like a little story.
Mm,
I think you're right about the swim. I don't think there's anybody out there who can give Lucy an advantage in the swim, as in they're not going to make her go faster. I think Lucy's going to go fast enough
yeah.
already. But instead, I think what you could have is if you had like Jess Limott and Sophie Caldwell in there, they could probably at least make the same pace easier for Lucy, so that she's going to have more energy. Because as she said when I was talking to her, it's all about getting her on the run using as little energy as possible, as fast as possible. So I think if they can have athletes who can swim with Lucy, and I believe Jess and Sophie are probably the two most likely to be able to do that.
Well, yeah. If you look at what happened in Leeds,
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing that can happen is three very good, very similar level swimmers can push each other along to reach that point. Because sometimes when you're swimming, just having some company of somebody that's at your own pace, pushing you a bit harder, because we know what it's like. We've spent hours in the pool on our own, swimming up and down. But when you swim with a group, it pushes you to that extra level.
yeah. And again, I don't think it's not like all 10 of them have to be in the water either. Like that, they could literally have say, those three or four, let's say those three plus a swimmer, I don't know, together in the water to do the swim part, and then you could have, like say, Kat Matthews, Jess Limott will get out with them or recover a bit and meet them later. Emma Pallant, Holly Lawrence, those guys ready for the bike to absolutely gun it on the bike, and then on the
Yeah,
run, yeah, they could take turns. So,
yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's probably one of the only countries in the world I think where they could actually do it, keep it all British. Because I look at say like the Norwegians, no, couldn't keep all of his 10 paces in. I mean, you could if you went outside of triathlon, but they've got a few very good guys, and then I don't really know that many other Norwegians. In the men, Ali, I mean, yeah, maybe the men they could. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, probably. But Nicola, again, I don't know enough about. I can name a few. I mean, they've got Danny, they've got Imogen Simmons. Yeah, I think British females in particular, it shows the rich vein of talent that you guys have at the moment in British triathlon. That you could probably have 10 all British women pace Lucy to that sub 8.
Yeah, it's
It's
remarkable,
something.
isn't it? I mean, how would
Yeah,
Australia
it's
do it? Coming up with 10.
uh, anyway, so let's move on to the next article, and I'm going to jump around because I actually put this later in the doc, but I think it follows on quite closely to what we just talked about. And it's also a follow up to something we spoke about a few weeks ago. Mark Allen is back making predictions about sub 7, sub 8. And this time he talks about the women's race. This article comes from Rumi Schoenveld from Triathlon Today. Again, a great website. Actually, you guys should go check it out. And that's that Mark Allen predicts Lucy Charles sub 8 project. He already made some very interesting predictions from the men's sub 7 attempts, but now Mark Allen dove into the women's sub 8 attempt. Both events featuring Alistair Brownlee, Christian Blumenfeld, Nicholas Sprigg, Lucy Charles will take place sometime this summer. Allen then breaks down possible finish times per discipline and estimates how long it would take Lucy Charles, in this case, to complete it. It's just going to be exciting to see not only if the women can break 8 hours, but also how much they're going to break it by. The world record is currently set by Chrissy Wellington. She went 8 hours 18 on her own at Challenge Roth. So clearly, I think the 8-hour barrier is well within range for the women, Allen states. As Allen dives into the numbers per discipline, he starts his predictions for the women's race with Charles, saying she's absolutely on fire. She won 70.3 World Championships in St. George, crushed the swim, crushed the bike, crushed the run, and had the fastest swim bike run of the day. Here we go. The swim in a fast swim, Lucy is generally going to go around 49 minutes. So if she's drafting, this is going to be my conservative estimate. She'll probably go about 48 minutes. What about the bike? Lucy at Challenge Roth rode 4 hours 39. She averaged 24 miles or 39 kilometers an hour, 40k an hour on her own. If you add in drafting, generally you're going to go between 2 to 4 miles per hour faster. That means she could potentially average 27 miles an hour or 43.5 kilometers an hour. That puts her in at around a 4:09 bike split. For the marathon, it's harder to estimate a number, Allen explains. This is super possible if the day's right for Lucy in the sub 8 project and to be going against Nicholas Spirig, but we will save that one for another time. Considering the 1 hour 18 half marathon Charles ran during the Ironman 70.3 World Championships on a rough course, Allen predicts doable or double that time for the sub 8 project. That would put her in at 2 hours 36. This all adds up to 7 hours 33. He says, ironically, I predicted 6:33 doing similar estimations for the men. So am I right? Am I wrong? We will see. James, what do you think?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. And I love the synchronicity of it as well with the 6:33 and the 7:33. Now, none of the numbers he's put out there are beyond the realms of reason, are they? They're all within her wheelhouse and within her capabilities, looking at what she's achieved of late. So ultimately, I think it will come down to the day. Obviously, that's the most obvious thing I've ever said ever. It'll come down to the day, and if anything,
you sound like a pro triathlete, mate. I'm just happy to be out there. I've put in the training.
Yeah. You know, I respect my competitors. We're all good friends, of course. But you know, when there's no friends on course, ultimately, all of these things are within her wheelhouse. There are things we can't predict going in, like illness, injury, mechanicals, etc. All those sort of external factors that may cause an issue. But if none of those things happen, then I think that he could be right, and we could be seeing this sort of time from Lucy Charles-Barclay. Now, we've also got to factor in how good a triathlon's going to be at riding in a pack on bikes. Because we're not renowned for our bike handling skills, are we?
Oh, I saw a bit of that on the camp I was at down a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
pretty rough, pretty rough bike riding. I mean, that's the thing though. Again, if we're talking about the sort of athletes you'd be looking at, and say it is a Jess Learmonth as an example, those ITU girls are used to pack riding.
Yeah.
Like they, you know,
the women in the ITU are very good.
So I mean, and that's the thing again. That's a technical skill. That's not something you don't like. You know, to be able to get yourself to be able to ride from 40k an hour to 45k an hour is a lot harder if you were doing it solo because of the amount of effort to raise your FTP, to improve your aerodynamics, all that stuff, compared to learning how to ride in a pack. You know, like to me, that's not that big a hurdle to overcome. And again, I hope that it's not going to be like, hey, girls, you're my pacers. I'll be here on this date. Good luck. No, they're going to get together. They're going to do a lot of training together, you would hope. So that to me shouldn't be that big a factor come the race. I actually look at that bike split and I think it seems, because we're talking about the men riding like 52, 53k an hour average, and we're talking about the women riding 43k K an average. And I mean, you are the second biggest cycling fan that I know, after myself, of course, but you probably follow female cycling just a little bit more than I do. Is there a huge gap between what the women and the men are doing in pro cycling?
Um, the gap is narrowing.
Yep.
I would suggest that. I mean, that's a big question and a big topic
Yeah.
you've just answered, because now I want to talk for hours on this. Women's cycling has had a lack of investment, a lack of
Mhm.
funding, and a lack of promotion over the years. It doesn't get, it's improving, and it's improving. Finally, it's improving. It doesn't get the coverage that the men's racing gets. It doesn't get the funding. The teams don't have the money. They've got hardly any budgets. They don't pay the prize money. So you don't tend to see the the depth going all the way down through the ranks,
Yep.
because of that disregard that it's been treated with over the years. That is improving, so the gap will be narrowing. Yes, there is a gap between what the men and women are doing at the moment, but I think that gap will narrow more and more. um, Physiologically, I don't have the knowledge or the science to
Okay.
understand quite how narrow that gap could get, but it would be an
Do you,
interesting conversation to have.
do you think then, if, as you say, the gap is narrowing because of that, the inadequacies compared to the imbalance, that therefore by putting this group of women in a situation where they are going to have the ability to ride in a pack, and they're going to have access to this technology, that maybe that equipment and the draft in stuff might therefore actually benefit the women more than the men, because the men might already be riding very close to the limit. So the gains are going to be smaller. Whereas if women have this huge amount of untapped potential because they've not had the same developments as men had, that maybe
Yeah,
we could see that in this event.
I was talking more about pro cycling and the depth
I
of
understand, but again,
field. I
I'm
mean, in
just trying to.
triathlon, the women and the men are on the same equipment with the same sort of
But this will
funding,
be
the
on
same races.
this. I think what I more mean is if suddenly we're going to see a group of women draft in at those speeds, which we've not really seen. I mean, we've never seen in triathlon. I don't know what speeds they ride professional cycling. I guess I'm just wondering, are we going to see a bigger jump in the if Lucy's riding 40k an hour solo, could we see her maybe riding 45, 46, 47k an hour in a pack? Like, is that gap going to be bigger for the women than it is for the men? Because the men, we're talking about what they ride 45k an hour average, and they go to 52k an hour average for this. Like, that's 7 or 8k an hour difference. Whereas this one's talking from 40 to 43. Like, that's all I'm saying is I wonder whether that's the split that maybe is a little conservative. Maybe we could see that bike split go sub 4 hours. I don't know. That's the one, because I think
Yeah,
he's pretty spot on for the swim and the run. I think those numbers are pretty where I'd expect them to be. The only one I'm like, I wonder, and I don't have the information to make an educated decision. I just wonder whether we could see the women more so than the men see a bigger jump in the bike. I
yeah. I
don't
mean,
know.
I'd love to see a well disciplined team time trial, a women's team time trial team go at this distance, because they would smoke it.
Well, James, I don't know enough about technology. So the next article, we're going to refer to somebody who does know a lot about technology. And I got this article from DC Rainmaker. And I'm sure most people who listen to this podcast have heard of DC Rainmaker before. And that's because DC Rainmaker has doing a good old bit of speculation this week in the world of endurance sports technology. And I wanted to talk about it. And he put his hat on and he said, "Is Zwift about to acquire Trainer Road?" Now, I know you are a frequent Zwift user before you broke your ankle.
Yeah.
I see you on Zwift sometimes. Trainer Road. Have you used Trainer Road?
No,
Have you ever used it? Do you know what it is?
never used it. I know it exists,
Yep.
but no, I've never used it. What is it?
It's a training platform for cycling. It's a
Okay, so it's
digital
kind of
thing.
like today's plan, is it?
No, it's like Zwift without the digital world, I guess. And what
Okay.
they've been putting a lot of effort into, like an adaptive program. They're basically an AI training program that changes based on what you're doing, what you're not doing. It's an AI training platform.
Yeah.
But I guess you're going to find out a little bit as I go through this article. Now, the article is quite extensive. I'd encourage everybody who really wants to get into the nitty gritty of this to head over to DC Rainmaker's page and find the whole thing. I've chopped out what I think are the main points, but there's a fair bit of it to get through. So if one were reading the tea leaves of the indoor trainer industry, they'd probably be seeing some pretty interesting things. Over the past 3 weeks, we've seen increasingly clear signs that something substantial is about to occur between the two major players of endurance sports indoor training world, Zwift and Trainer Road, and the wheels seem to be in motion already. First, though, as a historical tidbit, it's worth noting that by and large, Trainer Road and Zwift grew up together, except just on different sides of the track. One has been heavily funded by investors, while the other has been entirely self-funded. In the beginning, they rarely, if ever, acknowledged each other's existence. And it's only been in the last few years that we've seen more acknowledgement from TrainerRoad Zwift exists, as the company has seen more and more of its users leverage TrainerRoad's training to ultimately compete on Zwift. But for the most part, Zwift has ignored TrainerRoad, instead offering a relatively basic structured training platform. Despite their differences, many users actually use both platforms as a way of keeping themselves occupied indoors. So he's given 3 reasons why he thinks that we could see Zwift acquire TrainerRoad. Now, this is the sort of level of stalking that I do sometimes when I'm trying to put together articles or things to discuss on the show, I dig it. I respect the hustle, mate. Good work. He said there are 3 core signs that point towards either an outright acquisition or a significant partnership. Let's dive all of them in order they occurred. First up was the CEO of Zwift, Eric Min, going to Reno, NV. Is that Nevada or somewhere in America? Reno, NV, on January 12th. For Eric, a guy who lives in London, it's peculiar to fly to Reno, and I certainly didn't see any epic outside ride photos posted. Sure, he was seemingly at Zwift HQ in Long Beach, California prior to that. The next day, after visiting, Zwift widely published a user survey that uses very trainer road specific language. The survey asked whether or not folks would be interested in the concept of Zwift Premium, which would include a slate of features that are more structured, training focused, all of which would cost more, and the exact prices vary. But it says Zwift Premium is literally trainer road, even using the same wording or terms. For example, number 1, adaptive training calendar. It's exactly the same wording that trainer road uses for their automatically adjusting calendar. Adaptive training plans. Again, the same wording. Now's a good time to point out that virtually nobody else in the industry uses adaptive training plans except Trainer Road. 3, daily AI-powered recommendations. This is Trainer Road's Train Now feature with virtually identical verbiage, even including make you faster wording that Trainer Road often uses. 4, automatic FTP detection. While Zwift does do automatic FTP detection, the key wording here is past performances, which Zwift doesn't do. Instead, they only do it upon something new occurring, and it's fairly basic. 5, take your workout outdoors. This again, virtually identical wording to TrainerRoad's feature for outdoor workouts, which also specifically include just Garmin and Wahoo at this time. Zwift has 0 outside features these days. The day after the meeting, Eric joined the Strava Club for TrainerRoad. But wait, did I mention Zwift CEO Eric Min also now follows TrainerRoad CEO Nate Pearson? At this point, you're probably saying, couldn't Zwift just do a TrainerRoad partnership instead? And certainly that's absolutely plausible. Zwift has licensed a handful of things in the past. And in the past, TrainerRoad's CEO has said he would be open to licensing model for their technologies. But based on years of knowing the CEOs of both companies, my gut says a buy it as more likely. I'm also hesitant to think that Eric would fly to Reno, meet with TrainerRoad face-to-face, release a big survey to their user base. Then he'd follow TrainerRoad on Strava, then follow the TrainerRoad CEO on Strava, all while TrainerRoad, a company known for engaging in rumors of their own forums, have gone completely silent, all for just perhaps a partnership. Now, that's a lot to unpack there, James Bale.
He went deep, didn't he?
He did, and
But
I
then
love
he
it.
always does. He always does.
He does, but so again, I don't follow this stuff as closely as some, but I definitely do follow it. And because of some of the things we're looking to do with MX this year, some of the things we're working on, something it's not the same, but there's some similarities maybe. I was very curious about this. Now, for people who don't know, a big world that I exist in away from triathlon, one of the big things I am engaged with outside of triathlon is video games. And I don't know how much you follow it, James, but there has been a real number of big acquisitions happening in video games lately, with Xbox buying Activision, PlayStation buying Bungie, Xbox buying Bethesda, big acquisitions. And this to me sounds very similar to that, where you've got the 2 biggest digital training platforms in endurance or cycling, one potentially buying the other to create this super company. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm more intrigued as to how good AI-based training can be,
Mm-hmm.
because having a coach is, I think, something that brings a lot of value to a lot of athletes' lives. Once you get to that point where you've decided you want to push yourself past a certain level, it takes that decision fatigue away from the athlete and allows them just to do what they're told and have somebody who knows what they're doing, sort of focus on them as an individual. Um, if Zwift is collecting all your metrics while you're training, heart rate, cadence, fatigue and all that, then I'm interested to see how an AI training database or training bot in the background, that was kind of the tip of the functionality iceberg, isn't it? I'm intrigued as to how that would go. If it is going to be something that is good, then a combination of Zwift and Trainer Road are probably going to be the two entities that can do it. Um, I'm not sure about the acquisition side of things because I never like to see
Hmm.
I never like to see sort of
Yeah, this is my thoughts
monopolization
too.
of
Yeah,
stuff. I like to see different parties doing different things and competing against each other to try and make the
yeah,
best. But
yeah.
what are your thoughts?
You've what you've just said is my big thing, and it's the same about the video game stuff I was talking about. Is the thing that makes me uncomfortable is, and we've said this a lot on this show, is for us as the user, competition is good. And
Yeah,
if you suddenly have the biggest platform buying the second biggest platform to create the absolute biggest platform, I'm worried as a consumer what that means. Like, Zwift has already put up their prices a fair bit to the point now that I just usually just leave my Zwift and don't even care. But I think sometimes I see that charge go through and I'm like, I haven't been on Zwift in like 2 months and I'm getting paid how
yeah,
much? I'm
I
paying
know.
how much a month? It's
Tell
like,
me about it.
it's getting to that point where I'm like, it's not a forgettable amount anymore. It's actually like, that's quite a significant fee for something that I'm only using here and there. I've never canceled it, but if these prices continue to go up because suddenly, what else can you do? They're
Yeah.
the only show in town. That's something that worries me. I
Relating to
don't.
the computer game world, though, I mean, I don't know anything about computer games, but wasn't there a big hoo ha of late about computer games? You used to just buy your game and you had your game, but now don't you have to buy like online add-ons and stuff
Yeah, you can. So
and
yeah,
stuff and
there's all
packs
sorts
you
of
need to buy? And people were
yeah.
moaning about that, and I worry that that's the road we'll go down, where they're just bleeding you for money because you're on the platform.
I mean, I don't know how much you use Zwift, but one of the things I've noticed on Zwift is they do the sweat drops now, which is like in-game currency, and you can buy bikes and you can buy wheels. And I have got like 8 million of them, and I've basically everything I need I've bought. But as soon as I saw that, that was me going, that's going to lead to in-game purchases like in video
Yeah,
games where you actually have to spend real money. You might want, you've got my new speed concept comes in a week, and I want that bike in the game. I can buy it for 10 million sweat drops, or I can pay $10 for it. And that, because that's what happens in games, is you can earn things and it takes you months and months and months of repetitive playing, or you can just pay $5 for it. People go, I just pay the $5. I can't be bothered.
yeah.
I expected that to happen, and that those are the sort of things that maybe get me a little bit worried. Is that complacency is another one that makes me a little bit cautious. If they just go, well, we don't have this thing, let's buy this one, and then we don't have to worry about it because we're the biggest now, and all those other ones can fade away. That concerns me a little bit too.
I've just
And then
learned
the other
something new
thing,
there, mate. I didn't realize that you could spend sweat drops on stuff. I must have fucking loads of them because I've never
check
bought
it out.
anything.
I've bought a few things, but yeah, like that. The reality is Zwift is a very strong brand in endurance sports. Like most people use Zwift, and you don't use some people use both, but Zwift is the main platform for most of us for our indoor cycling. And if they suddenly are doing the AI, and again, I don't necessarily have a problem with AI. I don't think it's for me. I wouldn't use it because I'm not that athlete, but I get why people would.
No.
But yeah, if suddenly this very influential brand has this thing that's yet to be really proven, and then they become complacent or something, like I just that worries me a little bit. And again, the monopoly thing concerns me. I think that as users, we need competition. We need people trying to get our business, because that's why prices stay competitive rather than going, it's $50 a month now, and if you don't like it, piss off.
Yeah.
Competition is a good thing. So yeah, that's the thing that concerns me. But I guess from a development point of view, I mean, the stuff that Trainer Road have been working on for a long time is very exciting, but they've always been limited by by their funding. Zwift is a very, very wealthy company with a lot of backers. So Trainer Road having access to that money suddenly means that technology could flourish. Maybe we could see something incredible that could mean that people aren't just doing junk miles and bullshit on indoor trainers. They're actually getting better. Then it's
Yeah.
great. But I guess we'll see. This is all speculation. They could have already announced it by the time this comes out. I don't even know. But I thought it's worth talking about because this is potentially going to be a very, very big piece of news for endurance sports in the coming weeks, months, years. So it's definitely worth talking about.
Indeed. And don't trust big companies. No
Don't
matter what their
trust big companies. Don't
marketing
trust
people
them.
say, their objective is to make as much money as possible. So everybody
Exactly.
cheers this acquisition through if it happens. Eventually they'll have you over a barrel.
Like Ironman.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Well, let's go to something a bit positive. And I thought this was also a good thing to follow up after last week's discussions around the PTO. And that is Sarah Wesner-Flynn put this in Triathlete Magazine's her weekly roundup. And it's a simple, short one, but it's that USA Triathlon is offering discounted membership and payment plans for young adults. In an effort to draw more young adults to the sport, USA Triathlon is offering discounted memberships for athletes aged 18 to 23. The $36 fee, a 28% discount on adult membership, is part of USA Triathlon's Return to Racing Junior and Young Adult Stimulus Package, which also features more racing targeted to youth and juniors. To sweeten the membership discount, there will also be a $3 a month payment option through the USA Triathlon membership hub. I just wanted to put that in there, James, because we spoke a lot last week about that inability for people to access the sport. And this to me seems like a very proactive way of trying to do something to get more people into the sport. And I think that they deserve some praise for that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think when you're young, money is the value of a small amount of money is more to you when you're a younger person, and it's not. I don't think, because it's easy for some people like you and I to be like, what, $36? You just pay that, you'll be all right. Whereas I think this is a really good move, because the more accessibility we can bring to the sport for as many people as possible, the better.
I agree. Sorry, I was checking something. I got a message.
Yeah, you disappeared then for a second, didn't you?
I did a little bit. I won't put the dramatic music in this week like I did last time when I stopped paying attention, though. That was to make up for not paying attention to what you're saying. No, again, it's a good thing. Just wanted to give them a little pat on the back, because
Yeah.
we don't want to always just be bagging out on people doing the wrong thing. Now, from this point in the doc, mate, you've sort of taken the lead, and I've done a lot of reading this episode. So
Yeah. You want me to do
the rounds over to you?
Do some reading. So
Take it over, mate.
Andorra is ready to host the World Triathlon Winter Championships for the second year running. This is from Inside the Games website. Competition is set to begin at the World Triathlon Winter Championships, and tomorrow, with Sant Julià de Lòria in Andorra hosting the event for the second year in succession. The Winter Duathlon Championships are being held on the 2 days before winter triathlon races are scheduled. So it's duathlon which is set to take centre stage tomorrow. This is tomorrow as in the day the podcast is released. So when you're listening to this, it'll be today. The Winter Duathlon Championships are being held. Men's and women's senior, under 23 and junior races are all scheduled. Winter duathlon consists of running and cross-country skiing, and for the elite races, and athletes are expected to compete each discipline 3 times, starting with a run. Power races and young age groups contests are due to follow the next day. Winter triathlon competition is set to start on Saturday, February the 5th, with races comprising a run, ski, and ride on a mountain bike. Men's and women's elite races are due to take place on Saturday, with a mixed relay following the next day. Now, we haven't really covered much winter triathlon before, have we? But
why is that, James?
Yeah,
Can you possibly think of a reason for that?
I just think it's quite cool. I would love to go do one, man. I think it's quite cool. And I love how knackered they look when they cross the finish line as well,
Well, haven't you seen Jan Frodeno's been up in the mountains training and skiing? Maybe that's what we're going to see. Jan's not going to retire. He's going to switch to winter triathlon after he's finished with the racing Ironman. Maybe that's the plan.
I just know that a lot of us out there at the moment are starved of races to watch. So I thought I'd put this in there so that people know there is some multidisciplinary racing happening this weekend if you want to go and find it.
Mate, I'll tell you what, like let's go off topic. I know we're a triathlon podcast, but the Winter Olympics are starting, mate.
Yeah.
And there are so many good winter events to watch. In particular, if you are an endurance sports fan, you need to watch the biathlon, which is the ski shooting. It is the best shit. Like, it is so good. And the cross-country skiing, it's the best.
Yeah.
100% you need to watch, even if they're the only things you watch during the Winter Olympics. Watch those two events. As an endurance sports fan, you will love them. The biathlon is honestly, it's one of the best sporting events you can watch. It's so good. So
I agree. Without question. And they collapse across the line because they are totally done at the end as well. Yeah.
The control to slow their heartbeat as they shoot the gun is just insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
So this is the next story we're going to talk about is off the back. Really, I included this because we've had a lot of
huge,
unfortunate doping stories in the last few podcasts, haven't we? Which is,
Russian doping stories.
A lot of Russian athletes have been banned. Yeah. So World Triathlon partners with International Testing Agency. This is from Tri24/7. There were notable changes announced this week by World Triathlon with respect to the process by which its anti-doping activities are undertaken, with news that a substantial part of the management of implementation of its anti-doping program will be transferred to the International Testing Agency, ITA. The initial contract runs until December 24. The ITA was created in 2018 under the supervision of the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, and the International Olympic Committee, IOC, developed in the wake of the findings of systematic doping in Russia and the alleged collaboration with the Russian doping agency, Ruzda. The aim was to create independence and remove potential conflicts of interest, where a nation/sporting governing body/organizer, etc., was responsible for implementing and testing and reporting on its own athletes. Specifically, if a body's responsible for promoting a sport or event, and potentially the commercial realities of that, then there could be, or importantly, perhaps be seen to be, incentive to sweep things under the metaphorical carpet. You don't say. Thus, the purpose of this move, and ITA undertakes similar roles for federations in cycling, gymnastics, judo, and amateur boxing, among others. It's primarily driven by a move towards independence. One might reasonably assume that those roles will be better fit the core competencies of a specialist too, leaving the World Triathlon to focus elsewhere. Now, there is quite a big scope that they released, but I think the most important element of that was the last paragraph, which was World Triathlon will have full access to the ITA's whistleblowing platform, Reveal, and the preliminary assessment of the information received via this platform. Both organizations will work on the development and implementation of a long-term storage and reanalysis policy and long-term storage of samples in the ITA's centralized storage facility. Now, that's quite notable because it was the ITA which undertook re-examination of samples from the London 2012 Olympics and highlighted more than 80 undetected anti-doping rule violations and numerous medals being reassigned.
80?
Yeah, 80, yeah, as a result.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. So I thought this was quite an interesting thing to go about because I'm glad they're making this move because
Suddenly started me paying attention. I was like, what?
Yeah. Something that has always annoyed me about cycling back in the day was the fact that the governing body of the sport, responsible for promoting the sport, making money off the sport, was also responsible for policing the sport. And those two things contradicted each other, and they led to stories and accusations of complacency and sweeping things under the rug. Now, this is all, it's not proven, but there's a long history in cycling of that, as there probably is in other sports. So I was very pleased to see triathlon making this move, and it blew my fucking mind, mate, when I saw that 80 undetected anti-doping rule violations.
80?
Yeah, it's a lot,
80?
isn't it? Yeah. And
man, it makes you... that's brutal. That's so disappointing, isn't it? Like...
It is. It's good, though. It's good to see these things are being discovered, and it's good to see that processes are being put in place. Quite how independent they will be, we'll see. But there is an extra detail at the end of this story. With World Triathlon will retain responsibility over the management of its therapeutic use exemption program (TUEs), and will continue overseeing the results management process. World Triathlon and the ITA will pursue the discussions over 2022 to delegate these remaining areas of World Triathlon's anti-doping program. Therapeutic use exemptions, again, have been a big issue in pro cycling with people
and triathlon, mate. To be honest,
yeah, exactly. People saying, I get hay fever or something, so I need this, and it's more of a preventative thing. But it turns out to be a performance enhancer as well. So there's some work needs to be done there. I think where TUEs need to be tightened up on, but I believe that TUEs should exist because I'm always racing under one. So,
mate, again, I think positive steps.
Yeah.
Independence is a good thing. Like you said, I think that separation from the people that profit off it is a good thing. And man, I just can't get over that 80 undetected doping rules from 2012 Olympics.
No, I know, it's insane, isn't it?
Yeah. It's upsetting, mate. It's really, really upsetting. It's fucking hell. What did Marisol say? She said this agreement is a very important step forward to guarantee the full independence of our anti-doping program, and I'm absolutely convinced that this cooperation will bring great success to our organization, Marisol Casado said. And I agree, and I hope and I choose to believe that this is a step they're taking in pursuit of independence and clean sport, because as we've seen in the last 6 to 12 months, unfortunately, it's not as clean as we all think it is.
No.
It's definitely not as dirty as the endless comments we saw around Christian's performance would make you think it is, but take the
policing of the sport away from those that are promoting it. Those two things shouldn't be in the same bed together.
100%. I think that's it's a really it almost makes you go like, why hasn't this always been
totally.
the case? Like,
totally.
I mean, again, they've had 80 cases of it at the Olympics when it hasn't been. Like, learn your lessons, move on, get people.
If you look back at the old days of pro cycling, mate, and cyclists making huge donations to the UCI.
Yeah.
You know,
Or certain chamois creams they're using, and
yeah. Well,
yeah, mate.
plenty of it out there.
Jesus.
Now, the next story is I thought we'd have a look around because Super League Triathlon, one of our favourite race series out there, have released the more detailed information around the 2022 Arena Games format, prize money, and more. Now, I thought we'd have to have a quick chat around this. The
We can.
Super League have announced that they've got 3 Arena Games happening, one in Munich on
Yep.
Saturday the 9th of April, one in London on Saturday the 23rd of April, and one in Singapore on Saturday the 7th of May. Singapore will be the championship finals and will offer both higher points and increased prize money. Now,
And a world championship title, don't forget. There's
and
an
a
actual world championship
yeah,
title
because
this
they've
year.
partnered with World
Like you.
Triathlon, haven't they? So
World Triathlon, sorry.
yeah, the format used for 2022 will differ slightly from those we saw at the SLT Arena Games in 2021. For those events, each athlete competed 3 back-to-back races, gaining points for their finishing position each race. Race 1 was swim, bike, run. Race 2 was run, bike, swim. Race 3 was bike, swim, run. The overall winner was the athlete that gained the most total points across each of those 3 races. There will be no need for points this year, as all the racing will be first across the virtual line. Wins format. To achieve this, pursuit starts will be used across the final legs at all stages. We've seen this used during the SLT Championship Series in 2021 and also in the Olympic events such as the modern pentathlon laser run, a concluding discipline of that sport. The distances will be familiar: a 200-meter swim, a 3 to 4K virtual bike ride, and a 1 kilometer on a self-powered curved treadmill. And for those who like the details, the drafting function will be on within Zwift cycling.
What does that mean? A pursuit?
It'll be based on they'll do the first couple of rounds, and whatever the differences in finishing times, they will start with those differences between them.
I see. So instead of it earning points, it just impacts where you start for the final. The gap.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got that advantage in the final or disadvantage wherever you finish.
It makes so much more sense once the sexiest voice in triathlon explains it to me. So
in Munich, 16 athletes and London 20 athletes will take place in heats and final basis. In the heats, athletes will race twice. Both stages will be in swim, bike, run format. The times from the first stage will provide a pursuit style start order for the second. Thus, in the second race, the winner of the first will start and the second place finisher will start behind them, and the number of seconds slower than they were in the first race. Overall heats results will thus be based on when you finish the run portion of the second stage. No requirement for points accumulation. Nice and simple. In Munich, the top 3 finishers in each heat, plus the next 2 fastest athletes from across the 2 heats, will progress to the finals. In London, the top 4 finishers in each heat, plus the 2 next fastest athletes from across the 2 heats, will progress to those finals. Athletes that qualify for the finals in Munich and London will race 3 more times over these formats: swim, bike, run bike, swim, bike, run. And then you get to Singapore Championship finals. What are your thoughts so far, Mr. Ford?
I'm keeping up. I think I dropped off a little bit. I wasn't too sure. I'm back there. I think I'm following. I'm looking ahead, mate. This is a bit of an arena games in itself. Getting through.
I love the arena games. We've both commented on that before. It was great, and I think when they happened last time, one of our comments was the point system needs to be simplified so that it is the finisher on the road that wins the race. And it's good to see that they've listened to that, because that's what you want to see, isn't it? You want to see the person who's finishing first be the winner. And I think the simplification of that will make it easier for the viewer as well, because you won't have to be totaling up points as you go along.
It looks to me quite simply that the difference between the others in Singapore is that Singapore will have a repechage, which means those people that don't qualify through the heats will then have another attempt to qualify for the final. I think that's the only
difference.
Major difference. So it means if you go through the repechage, you have to race 7 times. Jesus Christ.
Totally.
I love it. Cool.
Now, there's a lot of prize money on the line. You know, finishing first in Munich and London, you get $5,000. Finishing first in Singapore, you get $7,500. And that goes all the way down to 10th place, where Munich, London, it is $300, and Singapore, it's $525. So
it's a bit ironic, isn't it, saying lots of money and then putting those amounts? I'm like,
yeah, well, you know,
there's some money up for grabs.
Yeah, the adding all those up and applying for male and female, you get the following: Munich, $40,600 total; London, $42,200 total; Singapore, 57,000 total. A bonus pool of 36,000. Overall, the total prize purse is $175,000.
What's interesting about that to me is if it seems that we keep hearing about the arena games are like this very progressive part of the Super League model, but the prize money is significantly less. Hey, I wonder why that is. Like, I wonder. I don't know. I can't be bothered thinking about it. I'm sure there's reasons.
It's probably to do with partnerships, sponsorships. You know,
Yeah.
they haven't got the sponsorships and partnerships yet for that format because it's not. But I think now that it's a World Triathlon event as well, I think we'll probably start to see that improve and increase. It's
Mm.
it's still, yes, it's tested, but it's not as tested as other formats. So we'll see it develop. I think, because I think it is the future of e-racing. This
I think
format.
so too.
Yeah, I love it.
Again, I love it too. I think it's great. You know what else I love, James? I love hearing what's happening with the PTO.
Welcome to the down low with the PTO. Mate, the Professional Triathletes Organisation today announced the first ever stateside PTO tour event, the PTO US Open, in partnership with USA Triathlon and the Dallas Sports Commission and the City of Irving on the 17th, 18th of September in Los Carolinas, Irving, Texas.
Well done.
Thank you. The inaugural PTO US Open is the third race of the PTA Tour, which also consists of the PTO Canadian Open, Collins Cup, and Asian Open, and PTO European Open. This US stage of the PTO Tour will see the world's greatest non-drafting professional male and female triathletes competing in Irving for a prize purse of $1 million. $1 million, mate.
Let's be. There'll be drafting athletes there too. Like there'll be plenty of short course people who are going there too. So I think that's at a
Yeah,
non-drafting
yeah.
event. At a non-drafting event.
Exactly. The race venue is at Levy Event Plaza, a convenient 10-minute drive from Dallas Fort Worth International Airport. Opened in
Cool.
2020 in the city's Las Carolinas Urban Center along Lake Caroline.
Oh yeah, that
Caroline?
place. My favorite. My
Yeah.
favorite place. I know it so well.
As a dedicated outdoor hub for the Irving community areas. Athletes will swim in Lake Caroline and bike and bike. The bike and run
And
courses will take athletes on a rolling hills through the main thoroughfares of Irvine, including Las Carolinas Boulevard, Lake Caroline Parkway, and Royal Lane.
my
Obviously, me and
favorites.
you are very au fait with these areas, mate. We've spent
Absolutely.
many an evening watching the sun go down together on Lake Caroline, haven't we?
One of my special places, mate. Now,
Yeah.
the reason I thought it was really important for us to put this in, we were a little bit mean to the PTO last week, and I think we focused a lot on the we've focused on one aspect of their announcement of age group race, and we neglected to actually cover the positives of the age group race. And I thought it was very important to balance things out by talking about actually where this race is going to happen, because I genuinely am excited for these PTO tour events to be happening. I know there's a lot of talk in industry, both from the athletes and the brands and the sponsors about the PTO. I mean, we've had meetings with brands who have really started to ask a lot of questions about the PTO, and because of the reputation of the broadcast, they're getting like the importance, or we're hearing about the importance of these PTO events because they're basically a requirement for athletes to do them now because they know they're going to be so well broadcasted, which I love to hear. And yeah, I think I hope this works, mate. Like, I really think this is something. I mean, I've been watching the F1 Drive to Survive documentary this week on Netflix, and I just keep sitting there the whole time going, like, why can't we do this in triathlon?
Yeah.
And then I look and I'm like, I think this is what we're trying to do: a series with points and prize money, and like,
And a
I
narrative
really,
and
yeah,
storylines and.
exactly. I'm really optimistic for this. And again, I want to give the PTO credit. They reached out to us last week after the episode and said they heard what we said and they're working on things. And I think, like, I'll be honest, I was a bit nervous about saying what we said last week because we do have quite a good relationship with the PTO, but it shows the quality of that organization that they don't just throw the toys out of the pram. They're self aware enough to go, yeah, we're hearing it and we're paying attention to it and we're working on it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that they're a good thing for the sport, mate. And
Yeah,
again,
yeah, and that one age group announcement problem, with the costing, that would
yeah.
drift into the background and become history at some point. And ultimately, we've still got a new series of fantastic races for our professionals, showcasing our professionals being rolled out across the world, and it's very exciting. And I'm here for it, man.
Which ones are you going to do?
Oh, I don't know. I'll probably do the Collins Cup one, eh?
I think so too.
We'll be
I think so.
there. So why don't we do
Yeah,
it?
hopefully. Yeah, mate. Maybe. It means to take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Why not?
I'll kick your ass.
Bring it, mate.
Yeah,
Bring
we'll
it.
be on opposing teams, won't we?
Yeah, we will. Oh, bloody hell! I could probably get a start for Team International at the moment. Not really. That's just a joke, guys. I don't need that.
Mate, the deluge of Twitter
Oh, fuck.
comments
I know,
is coming.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That was a joke. I absolutely know I'm a very average triathlete. Don't you worry. If you want to tell me how much of an average triathlete I am, but do it in a friendly way, the best place to do that is MX Endurance. And you can come and join MX Endurance if you enjoy this podcast and you want more parts of this podcast by going to mxendurance.com/podcast, where you can sign up for as little as $3.40 a month. It supports the podcast. It gets us to things like the Collins Cup. It gets us to things like the Ironman of St. George, to cover the race, to do interviews with the pros, to give you guys all the coverage you need. It's how we do this as a video podcast now, all that stuff. So if you want to get more out of your MX Endurance podcasting experience, head to mxendurance.com/podcast, where you can sign up and join our podcast membership. James Bale, where else can they find information about our little company?
If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at tford14 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review. You can do it in the podcast app. It's super easy and really helps us out. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow the podcast. If you got any suggestions, comments, or criticisms, then send an email to podcast@mxendurance.com. Title Tim.
Mate, we did it. We got through. We got an hour done.
What a
peek
week
behind the curtain, guys. Jesus Christ. Before like an hour before we recorded, we sat down. We're like, what the hell are we going to talk about for an hour? There's nothing doing. We both dropped the ball a bit with interviews this week. So we will make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, we need to get someone for next week, don't we?
Bloody hell, that was a slog, but we've done it. We're here. James Bale, a pleasure as always. Until next time, talk to you later.
Cheerio.